I'm Roy Gerstenberger of First Person Services, and this is Delovely, a podcast featuring conversations with people who are creative, curious, and committed to building whole communities where everyone is included. My guest today is Liz Weintraub, currently a Senior Advocacy Specialist with the Association of University Centers on Disabilities, or AUCD. You may know her from Tuesdays with Liz, a weekly video series on YouTube highlighting current issues on disability policy, sponsored by the AUCD. If you followed the coverage of the Senate Judiciary Committee considering the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court, you might have heard Liz's testimony. She offered her perspective on his qualifications for the High Court based on his performance on a lower appeals court affecting people with disabilities. Liz lives and works in Maryland, but we caught up with her recently while she was visiting relatives in Vermont for the holidays. Liz, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today and be on the Delovely podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I have been looking forward to this opportunity to chat with you because I admire your work so much on the Tuesdays with Liz series, all the great interviews you do, and all of the advocacy that you've done over the years.
Thank you very much.
I would like to start off with just recognizing your history as an advocate.
Okay.
You have really done a lot of things over the years. You started in the 80s, correct, as a self-advocate in the state of New Jersey.
Yes.
And then you served on the board of the Self-Advocates Becoming Empowered, which is SABE. And after that, you worked on criminal justice issues and DD issues with the states of Pennsylvania and Massachusetts.
I wouldn't say ages. My parents sent me to a private institution in the late 80s from Riverview. Riverview is a boarding school in East Sandwich in Massachusetts. And some people might not call Bancroft a institution like Fern or like Willowbrook, but I call it an institution because it was a place that I can control. I lived in what was called a community. A community where there was a circle of probably 8 or 10 houses, like a house that you would live in now. You will share a house with probably 2 or 3 people. And it was a long driveway to get down to this community.
So it was a far away from the center of the action in the community.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's nowhere. You might think that we're in Vermont and it's where my in-laws have a house is nowhere, but it's in the country. But the difference is that the long driveway to this community. And then the other difference was there was a long, big rectangular building in the middle of the community.
I see. So what you pointed out was that you had no control. You had no sense of control. So for you, that means institutional life. And I've heard you talk about how that is reflected still in many settings that some organizations call community. It's community, but no control. So that's a key element, it sounds like, for you. For all people.
I just wrote a blog saying, are you in control? Do you belong in the community? Are you part of the community? Do people want you to be in the community?
And that for you, that's what you were saying in that blog. Those are the questions that need to be answered with a yes in order for somebody to really be potentially part of their community. Have you got any feedback from that? Have people argued that point, or they've generally agreed with you?
No, they somewhat argue.
In what way?
I think my own family argued that sometimes people need to be in that kind of environment to be able to learn, to be able to grow, to be able to just understand how to live in the community.
And what is your response to that?
My response is everyone can learn in the community. And if you didn't learn, if you weren't ever given the chance to learn how can you grow. How can you understand how to really be part of the community?
Yes, that's interesting, Liz. You know what that reminds me of when I'm listening to you describe that is it's like pre-vocational or pre-work. I've heard from other advocates like yourself that you find yourself always needing to get ready, but never really getting there. So, you'll soon get a job, but for now, you're going to have to be in this setting and have these kind of limitations. And it never actually happens. So that's an interesting point of advocacy that you have ongoing with your family and with other people. The title of that blog, was that the one that you said that community needs to be all? Can you say a little bit more about that?
Well, all means all. That phrase came from when I testified in the Kavanaugh hearing. All means all is a phrase that was from the Constitution. And I'm not a historian, but in the Constitution, justice for all, and everyone has a right to do things just like anyone else. Well, if that is the case, all means all. And that means people with disabilities.
Excellent point.
Justice for all.
Justice for all. Absolutely. There it is. And that was put into our Constitution and the founding documents, even though the people who were writing it weren't, for example, giving voting rights to women. And they also owned slaves. And so it's always been a goal, and we're still trying to achieve it, it seems, as a society, wouldn't you say?
I think that in some ways, minorities, and I would call people with disability minorities, Blacks, lesbians, all kinds of minorities, we're not free. We're not. All means all. It's community for some, or jobs are for some, or marriages for some. If you think of it, marriage for lesbians are just recently, same-sex marriages. And in some states, well, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about disabilities. But I wanted to make that point.
It's the same journey. One of the ideas that I keep in my head is that our communities are stronger when everyone is included. And we need to talk about all. We need to talk about we. We need to stop talking about us and them. And if we realize that we're all better off when everyone is included, all of the different groups that you listed, then that's the journey we can be on together. Over the years, when I first met you, Liz, you were on a panel with the Council on Quality and Leadership. And I was so impressed with how you brought the voice of a person who was supposedly benefiting from a system, right, that CQL was working with, different states and so on, that you brought that voice of what it's like to experience court systems, and that we should always remember that, to always bring that voice in the room, and to realize that our actions have consequences in real people's lives. It was just very powerful to hear you speak at those times. And I've always appreciated your voice there.
Thank you. I have two favorite words, phrases, all means all.
All means all.
Which we already talked about, but nothing about us without us.
Nothing about us without us.
And I really believe that if there's a discussion about me and my friends, then we should be at that table.
Are you finding that you and other of your friends who experience disability are at the table more or less? Has it changed over time?
I think people recognize that we can be at the table and we should be at the table, but there are times that people do forget.
They forget to include. Do you have an example recently that comes to mind?
I guess one of the examples I would share with you is around legislation. Legislation that is real complicated
Okay.
It takes lots of time to talk to us, to explain things to us. And I keep on saying to people, well, yes, it might take us an hour to explain things. And people will say, well, I can get through this much easier if you're not even in the room or you're not interrupting. Well, no, I should be in the room. And I have to say, AUCD, my employer, does a really wonderful job by including people with disabilities.
Great.
2 years ago, I had the honor of being, I had a fellowship with Senator Casey. He's the senior senator of Pennsylvania, and he is one of our biggest champions for legislations and that regarding people with disability. Well, there was one time he was doing a hearing on guardianship.
On guardianship, yeah.
And I helped him write a question to ask in that hearing. Obviously, I didn't get to talk because no staff get to talk. The senators did the talking. But I helped write a question, and that made me feel really good.
Did he invite you to do that?
Yeah,
Great.
He invited me to be a fellow for 4 months. So I developed a PowerPoint to help offices to understand what I did and why is it important to have people at the table. It's so important to have people in the office. And I can tell you, people have told me since I've been back at AUCD that, yes, they do miss me in the Senate because I have done so much work. And I don't know where that is going. I don't really know.
So Senator Casey was able to include you in multiple ways, not only having your voice present, but you helping him write and ask the right kind of questions. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been capable of doing, really improving his abilities.
And I can tell you how it came about. I have always wanted to learn what it was like to work in the Senate. I've been on this side of the table where I can tell my story, but it's much different to be on this side of the table. Absolutely. Where you're staff and you have to kind of listen and you're more of a questioner, like what you're doing right now.
I see the difference,
and, so I asked my boss, what is it like? And he then, just so happened, Senator Casey, as I said, Senator Casey is one of our biggest champions, probably the biggest since the late Kennedy died. So they asked me if I wanted to have a 4-month fellowship.
Wonderful. You had an impact, and it sounded like you walked away with certain lessons learned on your part. You got to see things from the inside.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there any other lessons that you think other advocates should know?
I learned that it's not always easy to be on that side of the table. I learned that you need to balance what's good for the advocacy community and what's good for the Senate. And I learned that deep confidentiality might be really important.
Can you give an example of that so I can understand that better? This is what I'm thinking. You can tell me whether I'm right. Confidentiality, when people are telling their stories.
Yes.
And you're sharing stories from others.
Yes.
That's, you don't divulge private information.
No.
In preparing for our interview today and thinking back about how much I admire your work as an advocate over the years, I was listening to another advocate, and I listened to a TED Talk from somebody named Brittany Packnett. And she's a young African-American woman who has worked in education for years, and she's been trying to support other people in being advocates. And this is what she said. I thought it was pretty interesting. One was that one of the most important ingredients in advocacy is confidence, and that we often think about advocacy as being something of having a lot of information and resources, but it's confidence that makes you move from thinking about a good idea to taking action, and from thinking about the barriers to thinking about the accomplishments and really moving forward. And so she said confidence is an underrated skill, which I thought was interesting. And she told stories about her own background. And her idea, and again, it reminded me of you, was there's 3 important things to have confidence. I told you when I first saw you at the CQL forum, I thought, man, that takes a lot of confidence to speak your mind and to say, this is what I believe, and you should include us. I mean, here's all these powerful people in the room. Here's Senator Casey, and here's, all of these folks. You've been on the President's Committee, President Obama's committee. So kind of scary, intimidating people, but there you go, and you step forward. She said confidence for her required 3 things: permission to be confident. The second was community, people to have your back and support you. And the third was curiosity. So starting with permission, for her, she had a mom that was very powerful and gave her an example of how she could be a powerful Black woman in America. And she was telling the funny story about her mom, watching her mom and dad go and buy a car. And her dad would step back and the salesman would want to talk to the man in the room, but he would say, nope, my wife is going to take care of this. And she negotiated purchases and was a powerful presence. And she said, having that example gave me permission to say, I can do that too. And so that made me think about a question for you. To do the kind of work that you've done, to step up and be on a panel, to advise a senator, to go to a conference and give a speech and so on. Do you have people in your mind that you admired and were examples to you in how to act that way, how to be an advocate?
Yes.
Who were they?
The first person, and then myself, but my dad.
Your dad?
Yeah. My dad was a person who stood up as, I believe this. I want this. I believe this. And
he sounds like he was proud about who he was and what he had to say.
And I remember just before he died about 3 years ago. And just before he died, he said to me, don't ever give in to people and stand up for what you believe in.
And you've lived by that, it seems like.
Yes.
Wonderful.
And I can tell you, when you were talking just a minute ago, it reminded me of the time that I had another big honor about I testified in the Kavanaugh hearing a year and a half ago. And a lot of people, I come from a very Republican family, and people kept on saying, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. Who are you? You're a person with an intellectual disability. What story can you share that will convince people that you can't, that to change their mind? Obviously, I didn't change people's minds, but
you had an impact.
Yes, I did have an impact. And I can tell you why. When I first found out about the story about at AUCD, we dig further into Judge Kavanaugh's history, like we always do for a Supreme Court nominee or any nominee.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's a vetting process.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
And we found out that there was a case about 3 women with intellectual disability who used to live in the institution in district, and they wanted an abortion and a cataract operation. Mm-hmm. And the lower court said, of course you need to listen to these women who were living in the institution in the District, Columbia. When they went up to the higher court, where Judge Kavanaugh was a judge, the decision was, no, you do not need to listen to these women because they have, I won't say the word, I'll say MR.
Really?
And I hope
that was in his decision?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And this was in the 70s. So in those days, it's called MR.
Common term, yeah.
Yes. And
so he overturned the lower court decision?
Yes.
I see.
And so when I found out about that case, I was like, that's the case. That's my case. That's my case. And what I mean by my case is there has been times in my life that I haven't been included in decision. And I have been not included in discussions or whatever. And so I wanted to have the opportunity to tell my story. And we have obviously a friend in the Senate with Senator Casey. Although he wasn't on the Judiciary Committee, but we do have a friend. So they invited me to testify.
So that's, once again, going back to what you said before, justice for all.
Yes.
And when you said it was your case, it sounds like you could really put yourself in the position of those women who had their voices silenced.
Yes. And I'll tell you a story why. And I tell this story all the time. When I was probably 21, 22, a young adult, there was a family meeting, and it was on Thanksgiving weekend. And it was on a subject that I could not understand. And to this day is still a subject that is really hard for me to understand. I need support in that. And there's no issue about that. I need support. I get that. We all need support in
Certainly.
one way or another. But I wasn't included.
Okay.
And so my parents said to my cousin who was over for the holiday, can you quote babysit? And it's 21, 22, as I told you.
And you still remember that?
Yeah, it still hurts every day. And later I found out about it. So I do know what the discussion was about, and I'm fine. And 30 years later, I'm fine. I know what's going on in my life and whatever. But as I said, it hurt when I was 21. And so when I heard about the Kavanaugh case, and when I understood, because I didn't understand, and my bosses had to help me understand what was going on, I could not have told you right now. I just told you the whole case right now, didn't I?
You did?
And I could not have done that when I first read the case. And I said, that's the case. That's my case.
That's the one. Because you, in telling that personal story, it's really powerful because you're letting us know what it feels like to be excluded.
Yeah.
That moment of, could you babysit?
Yeah.
Almost what was happening to those women, unfortunately.
Yes.
Yeah. So your father was a person that gave you permission to act and stand up, and he even gave you that last message before he passed away. If we look at the second element that Brittany talks about that's important for confidence is community, is to have a group of people that you can say they have my back when I get in trouble or when I get scared. She gave this wonderful example of traveling to Kenya and meeting a group of women who were the first all-female park rangers who learned how to be rangers, who went after poachers in Kenya, the country they lived in, and went after after animals, very powerful activity. And Brittany said, she asked one of them, she said, do you ever get scared in this job? And the person said, yes, I do, of course, but I have my sisters. My sisters have my back. So I'm wondering, again, thinking about you, Liz, having confidence, do you feel that you have confidence because of a community, that there's people who have your back? Who would you say that would be then?
I would say my friends.
Your friends.
I would say Tia Nelson, Nancy Ward, and another advocate. When I was at SABE, and I haven't been involved with SABE for a very long time, and to this day, I've learned a lot more about SABE. But Tia and Nancy really had my back about how to speak up and how to just be bold and how to just raise my hand. And I'll tell you a story about that. And going back, the President Committee on People with Employment, I was on that committee. Justin Dart, he came to a SAFE meeting and he said, I want to invite someone to be on that committee. And going back to nothing about us without us.
Yes.
There should be someone at the table.
Yes.
And
Justin knew that.
Yes. Yes. Justin definitely knew that. And so Rowan Johnson, who unfortunately had passed away, he was a wonderful advocate. And he wanted to run for the seat. And I said to Tia, and I was just in advocacy for probably a year or two. And I said to Tia, boy, I would love to be on that committee. I love politics. I love to be at that table. But I can't run. I'm nowhere near Rowan Johnson. I can never be a Rowan Johnson. She made me raise my hand. She physically raised me. And if you know Tia, that's Tia.
Raised your fist in the air.
Yeah. And I won
You won.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a great story. So someone who has your back and says, you can do it.
Yeah.
Cool. And SABE, self-advocates becoming empowered, and other advocacy groups create that community, and you benefited from that. That's wonderful.
And I also have to say, that was in the 80s.
In the 80s, yeah.
Or 90s, but today, I would say that people like Andy and Prado, people like Michael McCormick, they're wonderful people and they believe in me and they help me have confidence. And I could not have done what they did. Maybe I could have done what I did without them in the Kavanaugh case.
Oh, I see, yeah. So you formed the community that you need at the time, it sounds like, for the activity. That leads me to the third element that Brittany talks about, which is curiosity. Now, what she was saying curiosity meant, she gave the example, another little story, that she had worked really hard to organize an event, and she said it did not go well. She said that pretty much everything that could go wrong went wrong, and she felt terrible about it. And she knew she was going to have a meeting with her supervisor afterwards. And she said, oh, my supervisor is going to go through from top to bottom all the things that went wrong. And instead of doing that, the supervisor said, what was your intention? What was your goal? And helped her own her own learning, own her own education, and say, you can do this. What was your goal? What would you do differently next time? And have sort of a positive perspective. And it sounds to me like I have an idea of who those people might be for you. Who are the ones that help you have that curiosity about how you can do better?
Oh, Andy. Definitely. Andy is wonderful.
Great.
And I'll tell you a story, and I shared this on Facebook. When he first got there 6 years ago. He sat down with me and he said, what do I want to do? And I wanted to do a show called similar to Tuesdays with Liz. Well, I didn't know the name of it at that time. And I also wanted to work in policy. And I wasn't sure whether I could do that. I have an intellectual disability, and policy is very complicated, as I have told you.
Yes.
And so he said, let's try. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And you have a lot of friends around the table, which I do. I have a lot of friends that I go to meetings with. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And I've been in the policy team for probably 5 or 6 years.
Fantastic. So he had an optimistic perspective on giving it a try. The perfect try.
And I remember when I got the opportunity to be in the Senate, I kept on saying to Andy, after I said that I would do it, and after I signed papers and whatever, I kept on saying, do you think I can do this? Do you think I can do this? What happens if I don't understand something? What happens if Senator Casey will think that I'm silly? What happens if I don't understand what he says? Because you know how a senator says. And he said, try. You can do this. You can do this. And obviously I have.
You did?
I did. Yes.
Yeah. What does the year ahead look like for you?
The year ahead, I really would like to do more interviews for Tuesdays.
Yeah,
I would like to do more mentoring for people with disability. We have lost so many people this year. With Margaret Bristow, we have lost so many other. Carrie Luca, and I won't be here forever. Someday I might want to sleep or do whatever.
Sure.
And, not now. I'm too young to just rest. But maybe someday.
Sure.
And so I want to make sure that the younger generation will understand. And you know, just a few weeks ago, probably 2 weeks ago, I saw a colleague of mine. Her name is Jalen Marks. And she must be probably 26, 27 years old. And she's the producer of Tuesdays with Liz. She's a wonderful advocate. She's a true wonderful advocate. And she has done so much. But I saw her with Yoshiko Dark, just talking like you and I are. And how Jalen's eyes popped when Yoshiko was telling her stories and kind of reminded me of, oh my gosh, who is the next generation?
Yes. So the next generation's coming along and you'll be a mentor for them. You're looking for opportunities to mentor.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for meeting with me. This is such a pleasure chatting with you. I've learned a lot and I've been inspired once again about advocacy, and I hope that we get a chance to meet again soon.
And I would love to, if there's a topic that is appropriate for Tuesdays with Liz, I would love to invite you to be on Tuesdays with Liz.
I would be honored to do that. That would be fantastic.
So we'll figure out the topic.
We'll figure it out. Yeah, that'd be great. Cool.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Delovely is a media production of First Person Services. We hope you enjoyed the episode today. It's sponsored by listeners like you. Pitch in to keep the podcast going strong, highlighting people who are building whole communities. Find us on patreon.com/Delovely. And thank you. Have fun, everybody.